All right, folks, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our weekly workshop that we host live inside our live trading room here, Traders Talk, each and every Tuesday morning. Now, we're simulcast on YouTube, Facebook Live, etc., that being at Cyber Trading U. So for any of our attendees there, welcome on aboard, but we encourage you to join us live inside our trading room. So you'll see on the top left of our streams right now, a little QR code by the end of this workshop here. If you're interested in joining us, scan that QR code there to get a full 5-day trial with us. But great to see Mark, Wayne, Luis, Kathleen, Charlene, Patrick, had John just before, had Alex just before, had Chuck and Bill and Celio, and all of our students members just joining us there. So great to have everyone right now. I'll tell you what, it was not really like sunshine and rainbows out there this morning in pre-market. Obviously, the markets dropped off earlier on today, but that's not really why I just said that. Like, we kill it on down days, actually, not just because you could short the stock market, mind you, but not every stock is going like down with the market. There's a few stocks, the smaller cap stocks that are on the gainers list, that are making their own moves. They're on their kind of own planet out there. So even on down days where we do short and go with the market on the way down, there's actually a litany of other trades that we will look to run upward. Today it was a little tough. This morning in pre-market, it was a little tough to try and pluck out that big winner. And you might have a great start on a trade, but how about this? This goes to what I always teach inside our trading room now. I'm on webcam there too, so I know that Mark, Wayne, Luis, all of our members there can see me. Let me ask us here, folks. When I jump into a trade, for all of our students joining me right now, you should answer this right away. When I jump into a trade, when a stock breaks through a big level and I jump in, simply put, what am I looking for shortly after? Fausto calls it the 30-second rule, basically, where if he doesn't get his, reaction, what he's looking for within 30 seconds, he's pretty much calling it quits. More likely than not, it's not going to make, as everyone's saying in chat right now, that big move, that proverbial big move, right? So if it's not going to make that big move that you're looking for, I guarantee you, just like here now, like live on AISP, it's going to make a big move just the opposite direction. And like I said, that seems to be the case here. But that was kind of the case all throughout pre-market, actually up until this damn thing popped. So, this was my saving grace going into the market open of all things. But really before this, it was like kind of a dumpster fire. It was like pretty bad out there. CASI was very choppy, and then it just dumped off by 8 o'clock and after. So for as good as that looked in pre-market, it passed. This stock I had on our pre-market list, folks, at 7:52 this morning. Let me just show you this very fast. At 7:52 Eastern time this morning, I actually had this on our pre-market list at that time. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I took it off right away. This MNTS here. Well, why is that? Well, you can see what happened to the chart now. But this was looking actually pretty good going into the 8 o'clock move. It had made a pretty strong move from the last day or so. And, overnight, I thought there was a case to see this try and push up higher, especially going into 8 o'clock. Let's see if I could pull up my Benzinga Pro here pretty quick. But basically what happened was right at 7:58, 7:59, splat. This thing came out with news, bad news, something regarding convertible senior notes, being offered. To me, I took that as like a common stock offering. Anytime there's common stock offering news, stock gets crushed, and we don't follow it from that point. We basically step away from it. So it was looking good until it didn't look good, right? What else did we have? I took a couple losses in pre-market this morning. It was BBAI, I think, was one of them. I was looking for a better play on this after 8 o'clock. It ended up making at least a decent little bounce from 450, but I ended up jumping on this trade a little late and just chopped me around a bit sideways. For every stock that we had on our list, or even at that, every stock that we were scanning for after our list was posted, we were hopeful to see a move. The CIFR was looking pretty strong going into 8 o'clock, but then from there, no one really joined the order book, especially on the bid side, to get this to push. And then from there, it just went flat. So this was another trade I went break even on. I'm just showing you this because it's not easy. This was not an easy morning, especially if there was an easy looking setup. You thought it could be easy, starts off good, and then it just begins to pull back. And if it's not going to make that big move that you're looking for, it's going to make a big move just the opposite direction. So this was honestly the case for about like an hour and a half throughout the pre-market, from 7 to 8:30 Eastern time up until this started to make its push. Now, the thing that I could tell you is you don't want to keep bashing your head against the wall, waiting for that runner, waiting for that big push on something. But how you treat it kind of is this. you'd like to think that we're not the only people out there following these stocks. There's other groups of day traders. And honestly, folks, we are peanuts compared to some of these larger groups, let alone institutions. We follow these traders, right? And we do a pretty good job at it. But at least we can't just hold our breath waiting for stock XYZ to run, right? We're going to be probably holding our breath for a long time. Now, with this, though, if there's really utterly nothing that's moving and we start to get a pop on something like this, the hope is for these groups of traders to start to kind of notice this themselves and say, well, wait a second, maybe there could be an opportunity here. Oh, wait a second. There's an iceberg order up top at $4, $5. Maybe there's a case to run it up there. So you want to be optimistic, but you don't want to keep just throwing a dart against the wall and hoping it lands, right? So once this popped, I was already down on my morning with my student Manuel, and I'm like, man, could this go? Could this go? All right, well, I left off basically my coaching call with him as this was beginning to pop. And I don't know if he's here joining us live right now. I know he's busy in the mornings. That's why he has to trade pre-market with me, because he's busy running his family business pretty much this time. Well, let me try and show this to you here from the heat map. I'm going to try and show this to you here from the heat map right now. Give me a quick sec. I'm going to try and make this easy on the eyes for every one of us here, because I'll show part of my level 4, my heat map here, not all of it. Just make it easy on the eyes for us right now. Point out 2 price levels to me looking at that histogram, that volume histogram that has big volume spikes at it. What 2 price levels have the largest spikes of volume looking at this histogram? I have some questions that came in earlier just regarding another stock we'll cover next, PHUN Fun. We'll get to that one, of course. But, that one wasn't really moving as well in pre-market. So, of course, here we are every morning. We start off at 7 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, whenever you get to your desk. So, I started my morning off with my student in pre-market on a coaching call, and I'm just going you through my motions here. So we'll get to that PHUN trade just next. But a lot of us are saying basically 225, 235, kind of in between, right? You see this right here. And then also you have a pretty sizable lump right here as well, right? So that seems to be right around 235 and then 225, right? Kind of in between, right? So that's where this ended up making a nice little pop to begin. And it was shaking around. So I was telling Manny, I was saying to him, like, this needs to hold over 235 for me. That's the price I gave him. I guess in hindsight, it could have also been 25. If we look at 25, it was cutting around it a little bit too. It wasn't perfect around 225. But the price I gave him was the upper of those 2 volume bars there. It was 235 I gave him. So I said, you know what? If this can hold support right from 235, I think there's a pretty good case for this to try and make a push. And, I said that to him directly on a coaching call. But, of course, I write this to you all in just chat. So I wrote this right here at 8:39 Eastern time. I'm going to show this message right now to everybody. I said AISP needs to hold over 235 roughly as support for a potential higher high. I was at 8:39. I wrote that live in chat. Needs to hold over around 235 as support, capital S there, for a potential higher high. At 8:44 in the morning, I wrote to you, I said AISP just went under and over 235 for support. Needs to move up, back up ASAP, or this will be another pop and drop. So I'm cutting it real with you folks. Like, this needs to make its move ASAP. It needs to make its big move shortly after. So this was pretty much right at this time, 8:44, 8:45 time. Guys, this does everything I need it to do and everything that you need it to do too, because I want everyone to be following how we're entering these trades. This goes under 235 by a damn penny. But I'm telling you, this is what I have in my head before it comes down to this price. I'm writing this to you. So I am hyper-focused on this minimal move of under and over. Under and over. And it came down there one more time even here. I think it hit 36. Didn't technically go under, but this was the moment where I jumped in. I took my entry right there at 236 on the nose. My entry was, I wish I could tell you, I got out at like $3 or like 340 here. Obviously, I left a ton of money on the table because I started my morning off down. I got out right at 250. It was, or I'm sorry, not 250. It was like 260ish, 265. It started to push up nicely. I took a little money. I ran, and from there, yes, it pushed up more. I would have held on longer if I was plus on the morning already, if I had a cushion underneath me to begin. If I was break even, maybe. I don't know. I started off negative though. I was down on like 2 or 3 trades. So I got to get back to break even and then we'll start, see where we're at. This actually took me into the plus like by like a small margin, 5 or 10, 12 bucks. Just, I don't care. Just get me break even a little plus and I'll be happy. This ended up going up a lot more. So of course, the more it goes up, the more you're like, should help. But hey, I tried looking for that move earlier throughout pre-market at 8 o'clock, at 8:15, at 8:30, and there was nothing out there. For every stock that we had, it was just like a small start, and then it just went the other way. So I didn't want the same thing to happen to me here. And I'm just sharing that with you because, for as much as I talk about these big moves and, we're looking at this, I'm in that. Hey, I left a lot of money on the table on this trade with good freaking reason because I had to work my way back to break even and get back in the black. So the AISP was like my first better trade on the morning there. It took me at least to the plus. And then from there, after the open, really for me, I was bouncing around. It's like CLSK, for instance. This was my first trade on the day as it began its push at first. Led to a nice little pop, but then this was very underwhelming too. Bitcoin was like 500, 400 points away from breaking all-time highs. So for as much as this was looking good and we wanted more and more, ended up just completely folding the other way, right? So, that's right. Also tell you, I just said it before, but if it's not going to make that big continuated move, if this isn't going to flip into support, maybe it can over time, but you can't hold your breath waiting for that. And especially with Bitcoin and how volatile that is. The miners were getting beat up bad actually yesterday as Bitcoin was going up. So it was interesting to see that. But as much as you want a continuation here at this point, if you're not getting it, you got to run for the hills. That will take me to PHUN. That'll take me to fun. I'm actually in this trade right now. I was just about to be stopped out, it seemed like. I thought I was about to get stopped out just before, but I guess my stop order held me in. 1 second here. Got a lot of lines on this chart, right? Got a lot of lines, a lot of crap up on this chart, mind you. So basically, it's for me to tell you, just like I always say, for the 2 or 3 stocks that you are more pressed towards, the 2 or 3 stocks that you're more interested in trading for the open from 9:30 to 11 o'clock, or maybe even beyond after that, we got to make sure that we know where our levels are. So I ended up taking the time to plot different levels out for this stock, PHUN. And at least earlier today, it's a matter of saying, okay, if this could end up pulling into this support, breaking under and over, whether it's this one to begin, or maybe over time, it kind of wedges into these next two. Basically, I'm looking for that same movement that I had previously on the AISP, just here. And it took a little bit to get it going. After the first 5 minutes, it shook down. It started to solidify. It was building and popped. Things were good. And then at that point, again, same to be said, it ended up eventually pulling back. It went the other way. It kept bouncing off other support lines I had here. So it made for opportunities on this throughout the morning. I think, okay, I'm not going to keep moving my goalposts and keep trying to catch this on the way down, mind you. But for as much as it popped yesterday and it popped this morning in pre-market, there was a case to see support build. And there still is right now live. But at least here, there was a case for it here. Just it tried, it failed to go higher. If it's not going to make a big move up going higher, it's going to make a big move just the other way. So it ended up pulling back. And actually just before at 10:30, right before I started my coaching call with one of our students, Philip, ended up pulling down to my next set of support. So right now, bottom right, you see this here, 1388. Right now, I got my stop set pretty much right under, I think, this candle here, right below the low of this candle. I think I have it set at, if I'm not mistaken, my stop. But at least at this point right now, I'm playing fun off the levels that it traded off of yesterday. I even mixed in a couple of Fibonacci's, which I rarely do. That honestly creates too much crap on the charts for me. So now at this stage, it's just a matter of seeing higher lows. Let's get this to break up higher towards whole number level 15. Just make things simple on us there. Just focus on that one line for right now as a resistance. But there's a question that came in from one of our students here. I do want to get to that. I just wanted to give you my thoughts on PHUN at least before I go into that question. So here is from one of our gold students here, Jith, and I was very happy to see his message earlier this morning. He sent it in early, so perfect. Let me just get to this here. A little water break before that. It says, can you just go over the PHUN entry at 9:46 yesterday? Okay, let's go yesterday even. For $11.32, got entered quickly, got out, and then again made another entry seemingly at the same price after a few moments. and lost money since it was not making that pop. Just wanted me to go over the move. And it was from yesterday, not even this. So let's actually do that. That's nice. Let's see. Here's the thing, right? Just on this one trade, we got to say this stock has a pretty thin order book. So really, I phrase it semi-jokingly. It's true, though. One cough, one sneeze, and this thing will tank. So that's where you got to be very mindful for that, just looking at how empty the order book can be at times. Let me just pull this up right now, Jeff. I'll just get the heat map up on my screen from yesterday. It's going to load up. All right. And again, if you have any other questions, folks, for Joyce, Margaret, Bill, Michael, any of us in chat right now, just type it in the main chat board now at this stage. You're good to go there. I always like to go through emails first. So let's see. This might be a little, I'm not going to use the volume dots there. Okay. So Jith was asking about the entry from like 9:45 in the mornings or so, roughly around this area. So this is tough because it pops up so fast. It does get halted right out the gate here at 9:38. It ends up getting halted up until 9:42 in the morning. All right. So let me ask our students here in chat. Our more experienced students and students that have been with me for a little while in phase 2, namely, because it's not something I talk about in phase 1. Really, it's not something a new student I wouldn't expect for them to really understand right out the gate. Just something down the line I talked to you about. But when a stock gets halted, when it reopens up, what am I looking for pretty much right away afterwards? We know it gets halted for like 5 or 10 minutes. And in that time, you want to take the time to prep up where your levels are, look for icebergs, look for chart levels. But what pops up at least right when a stock reopens from a halt? What pops up? So I'm not asking necessarily what the stock does as far as trend up or down, but what pops up at least? What comes up? What appears at least? Because there's something extremely important that appears. I teach this here in Traders Talk, spread throughout. Phase 2, obviously, I have the chance to go over it a lot more. But much like at 9:30, folks, much like at the market open at 9:30 every morning, there's going to be a large print that comes in on the tape. Actually, I don't show it here because I took the volume dots off, took the circles, the dots off from here. So it actually doesn't show. But for all my returning students, when you see a stock reopen from a halt, you're going to see what's called the opening halt print. It's a big transaction on time and sales. So you know what? We got a tiny amount of time here, Jeff. Let's see if we could try and fish through the old-fashioned tape right now. I'm going to see if I could just get this done fast. So that was basically at 9:42, 9:43 in the morning. Find out. See if I get this one shot. One shot. Yeah, there we go. Nice. All right. So the opening halt print, when this got halted yesterday, let's go to yesterday's graph and show you that. In fact, we showed the book map there, but that's even from this morning. There we go. There we go. Okay. So from yesterday morning when this first ran up, when this got halted and reopened up, well, your big opening halt print there, it's about 42,000+ shares. It's at the price 10.50. Now, how big is 42,000 shares for fun compared to, I don't know, just your average Joe iceberg order out there on the heat map? Well, this is what the order book looked like yesterday. So let me ask all of us here. I want to make sure that we're all awake and not asleep behind the wheel. All of us in chat, I know, are here to go. But, all of us collectively, even if you're kind of a bit gun shy, a little bit trigger happy, or a little bit gun shy, at least a little bit not trigger happy to chat, where do you see resistance? Where do you have this dark orange line stretching across the page here? Where do you see it? What price? And what's the size of that iceberg order? So it looks like everyone in agreement so far. Students like Joyce, John, Wayne, Patrick, Scott, all saying the right price at 12. And how many shares is that for? How many shares is that for? You look on the column COB, right? Current order book. Look at the column COB. See right there. It says 21,735, right? 22,000, right? Okay. I got a simple question for us here. Simple question. Not throwing curveballs here. We're throwing just a slow-pitched softball right down the middle for you. What's a larger size? What's a bigger size? Is it 21,735 or is it 42,200? You tell me. Tell me, what's a larger size? So 42,000, obviously a lot bigger, a lot more meaningful in terms of at least comparing apples to oranges, looking at that one order, that one print, I should say, compared to the iceberg order up top at 12 bucks. Okay, now I'll be honest with you here. It looks like where it got halted from, it pulled back down to, and that could have been an even better entry point there. I'm focused on a big level, and I'm looking for support. So it popped and moved up even more. On a pullback here, this could be support. Right here, where my cursor is, could be the point where it makes this move, where my cursor is now, right? So it comes down, but it slices right below the level. It looks like it just cuts under it instantly and just drops. At that point, that's like basically the opposite of what I look for. It does not go under and over. It just goes under and stays under, right? So you might have a great plan, a big level, looks good. You might want to take the entry, but if it's not going to make that big push that you're looking for, it's not going to make that big push that you're looking for right now. We're trying to get going on this fun trade live right now again. Again, there's a good chance that you get stopped out. So you got to be very careful and make sure that your seatbelt's on extra tight pretty much for a trade like this. But nevertheless, it ends up breaking under and back over. It goes under. It breaks under this as support. Support should initially become resistance. No surprise. But the more times it knocks its head on that door, on that resistance, I'd like to think eventually we're going to get that larger reaction, or at least the chance for the entry, right? I shoot straight. So, maybe this does pull back down and breaks lower later on. This prompts the entry at least. By the time this ends up breaking back through this big level on the way up, right there, this is your trigger. This is your entry to try and look for that trade, right? Easy to say, it works out flawlessly after. It's what you look for. So thankfully, it gives you what you want. But if it ended up pulling back down here a few minutes, you got to make sure you get out or make sure this holds higher lows. You don't want to be stuck in this trade as it's tanking. Trust me. You don't want to be in the stock as it's tanking. This was actually a dirt cheap penny stock, basically, before a reverse stock split at the end of last month. And this was a big pump and dump day where it ran up so nicely, it closed near the highs, but then it gapped down the following, overnight session. So it's not even to say, oh, it's a day trade, not a swing trade. You got to make sure you get out of your day trade before it pulls back. So at least you don't turn it into a swing trade over time, right? Hey, at least the 9:45 time slot there, Jit, that opening halt print, when it reopens from the halt, you see the big print coming in there. You'd see a big dot pop up on Bookmap at that time. It looks like it got halted again because I think it got halted going down. When it pulled back and it sliced under 1050, you said it just stayed under 1050 for a bit. Well, it actually got halted going down. So even here, when it reopens up at the time, 9:55 and change, let's take a look there brief. This one's not as big. 23,000 share print that came in when it reopened up off the next halt. That was at 9:55 in the morning. So, hey, what's a more meaningful print level? Is it the 1050 price or is it the 1015 price? I would say it's 1050 because that had the 42,000 shares at it, right? So even such, it ends up moving up, held it as resistance, like a pop and drop. And then the more times it knocks its head on that window, on that door, we'd like to think that we should get that reactionary move, that big move shortly after. Hey, look what happens here when it got halted again later on. Popped up at 10:23, 10:24 in the morning. It got halted because the next time it reopened up was at 10:29. So we'll take a look even here now, just to show what happens with these like halt prints. But I've went over this numerous times before, and I'm not just saying that to any one trader. This is like an umbrella comment to everyone. Don't let this slip past you. These halt prints are some of the most important levels on a stock, especially for a halt. Coming off of one, even later throughout the day. So, we're looking at iceberg orders. We always are. But it's also a matter of saying when a stock gets halted and it reopens up, where do we see that big dot, that big transaction on the tape at least? So what do we got? Let's see. Obviously, we know it drops in hindsight, but what happens here? 1 second. Oh, looks like this got halted actually a couple more times in between, even at like 10:14 in the morning. All right, let's go back maybe 1 extra minute. I don't want to waste too much time fishing through for these like prints on the tape if we're not going to see them come in. It's tough to fish through them at times, so. What am I doing? 10:27, 10:28 yesterday. Oh, maybe. Let's see. I don't know. It's not pulling up right now, Jeff. This is where it got halted from, though, and again, reopened up pretty much at this price. I'll assume it's 15.97. It says open right there, 15.97. And we know that $16, a whole number, would be right above it. So basically saying if this breaks above this price here, there is good chance for an entry. There's good chance to see, hey, if it could bust over this price, why not expect continuation? Well, not the reason that you don't expect continuation is if it fails to hold this as support. So like hypothetically, if you end up jumping in on this candle, even it breaks above it, you jump in. Okay, good start, but it's got to keep going. It's got to run. It's got to flip that into support after at worst. When it breaks right back under it on the same exact candle, that's the biggest red flag that you could have. I've actually shown the stock in the past, VSME. This was a stock off an IPO like sometime last year. I remember this like the back of my hand. I entered this trade when it broke over $8 on this candle. Great entry. It was an A+ entry in relation to what I look for when it comes to following momentum on the way up. But if it's not going to make that big move that I want, it's going to make a big move not the way I want. You know what I mean? So there on the PHUN from yesterday, well, it ran up so nicely prior to that final, move up, that final halt. But if it's not going to continue, what happens when the foot's taken off the gas pedal, right? Ended up pulling back at that time. Then even later on, it looks like it tried to come up there again. So you could see that it tried to continue. Hey, this could be a very opportune time. Not even here. I'm talking here. This right here, I could see as a very interesting opportunity. This sequence here. I'm not expecting any sort of move at this point, and it slams right back down instantly after. So this might be easy to say, but there's zero interest for me when it comes to looking for an entry at this time, at this price. A lot of time has gone by in between level tests. So you got to see more times for the stock to test a level in a shorter time frame. That's why, like right here, just shoot straight with you. This seems like a very apropos moment to look for this entry. Right here, this sequence. Maybe it's this candle, false breakout. This candle as well would be a great opportunity. But if it's not going to pop higher and make that larger move, it even popped up like 40, 50 cents. But in relation to what this stock has done from yesterday, from in the morning session prior to this last pop, if it's not going to move upward off that level, it's going to make a big move the other way, right? So, to show the reality in trading, right? Not everything's like, you should have entered right here. That, like, there's a really good entry and you could take it. And I'm going to show it to you even if the thing goes the other way, because you got to learn to at least get out before it really tanks. Use the 30-second rule. I always set my stops right under my entry level. For the entry level that I'm entering over, I got to make sure that that level holds as support. Maybe I'll set it under the low of the previous candle. Things like that. Just set it very tight. Even this morning goes to what I'd said previously with my own trading. Wasn't sunshine and rainbows this morning, folks. I was down like 165 this morning, 170 around there. So I had to work my way back. The AISP thankfully got me there, but even afterwards, it wasn't all perfect. Look at this right now. Pulling back down one more time right now. So even this, if it's not going to make that big move up, looks like it's going to stop me out here finally. It's about to. It's fine. I'm going to keep my stop where it's at. But I want to jump to another trade. This was not sent through email, but this was actually just on a call before. I was going over with one of our new gold students here. And hey, talk about leaving money on the table. I left a fortune, a college tuition's worth on the table for Mara as a short. And it was from the 25.50 level. But I was looking for 50 cents. I wasn't really looking for more than that. if I got more, I was going to be happy. And I did get more, but this dropped off a lot more afterwards. So, I had a question from a student just simply in relation to shorting. What do you look for in a short? It was very timely because they just joined us over the last few days as a new student. So I actually went back last week in the phase 1 stock course for the month of February's classes. At least when you go through the student portal, you'll see a full 60-minute class on shorting. I just did this past week in the phase 1 stock course for February's classes technically. So that's the full A to Z on shorting. But let's at least give you the spark notes here on this trade from Mara. So first, you got to make sure the stock is easy to begin with, like shortable. So if it's not, then sorry, but odds are you're not going to be able to get the shares. I'm moving quick this morning. So CLSK, this stock I normally was able to short. It's hard to borrow. I could always double check to see from TradeStation to see if it's if I'm able to request shares. I covered that in that class as well. I just made it easy on myself because I saw Mara today was easy to borrow. These stocks move pretty similar in their patterns together. So this is where, for me, actually to go back to CLSK, mind you, I was looking for a push up on CLSK as a long. Bitcoin was about to break all-time highs. It was like 500 points away. It was like even less than that. It was like $28 away, I think, at one point. I was telling Brian. It just didn't crack it. So we ended up getting like a 2,000 point shake on Bitcoin right at this point. And that's when CLSK pulled back. So I got washed out on a long trade I was in here. It was very disappointing. I was a little pissed actually. But then I started thinking, I'm like, oh man, all right, well, if all these are going to drop, I normally don't like shorting the crypto stocks too much, but I'm looking at Mara. It's easy to borrow. It doesn't say HB next to the ticker, so I know I can at least do it. Okay, well, it's already coming down here this time, and it's about to break a lower low from previous support. So to me, if this stock could break through this big level, not on the way up, but on the way down, that promotes my entry. So for me, it ended up just making that drop below 25.50. I was simply looking for this like bottom to hold as resistance. I'd taken my short at 25.46, I think it was. It was on smaller size because of the price and also just a little volatile. So I didn't do this on 1,000 shares. It was on 400 shares, I think, at the time. It was like 200 share positions. But point being, it ended up making that drop, and it dropped down to 25. That's where I was. That was where I was ideally looking to just see this build support again and see this build a higher low and try and go up, back up. So the good part about this trade, I guess you could say, like, I'm happy it worked out. I turned away for a second to focus on another stock, like my book map on my other screen. I turned back. This thing's already well under 25. This was at like 24.70-ish at that point. I'm like, oh man, okay, we're looking really good on this short now. So it made the drop from my entry level, 25.50, drop down to my support at 25. But it sliced right through that thing like a knife through hot butter. And at that point, I said, you know what? I'm up enough on this trade more than I thought I was going to be. I thought this would build support here and move back up. All right, you know what? The hell with it. I'll just take my money and run. So I got out at like 24.70s around there, like 24.70-ish. Obviously, I wish I held on to those shares later on, just maintain this smooth, as you could see, downtrend off the highs. There was utterly no need to get out of the trade in relation to strategy. In relation to Josh here being down $165, $170 in pre-market to start my morning off, even with the AISP trade that flipped me back into the plus, hey, I got to keep going. So I wanted to just be more mindful, take my money here, run. I was already up more than I thought I was going to be, but man, this just continued, didn't it? What a drop this thing had throughout the day. And you know what? Hey, hindsight 2020, right? Easy to say this kept going, but where could we find a support level? Where could we find a strong chart level here on this? Or where was the major support looking at Bookmap? Well, let's find out. Take a look. This is already dropping here by the time it comes down to 25 and breaks below this red-orange line at 25. Well, it seems like our next support level would be at 24. After that, 23.50. After that, 23. Look at the COB column. Look at the size here. They're like 65, 70,000 plus shares a pop. right here, 24, 23.50, 23, even 22. So, 50-cent levels, whole numbers, makes sense, right? Notice on the daily chart, this is pretty interesting. Just seeing this from the corner of my eye. We'll see if it works out. Basically, you got a doji. There back at the near end of February. Notice the open and the close on this candle are like 1 penny off. For any of my tech analysis purists out there, I apologize that this is not the exact same price. This is a freaking doji to me, all right? Meaning that this type of single candle pattern on the daily chart, and especially as you draw more towards the weekly and the monthly graph, those create potential levels for you to work off of, at least on the day. So, hey, looks like it broke below 22.90-ish right there. Looks like it broke below the open and close prices here, 22.90, 22.91. Maybe that could have been the bounce point. Let's take a look. Obviously, it broke lower later on. Tried, but it came right down to it. If there's a chance for under and over, I guess it does it on this one candle, and then pretty quickly shortly after, because it's supposed to make a stronger reaction up. If it's not going to make that sling right there, it's more prone to keep dropping. But now at this point, hey, look what it's doing live right now, at least. So if there's a case to see potential support, maybe it's now on Mara. It broke lower from here at this point. Support should initially become resistance. It wasn't breaking above it right away, that's for sure. So the more times it nips this level, I think that there is a better chance in which this doji from the daily chart, 22.90-ish, could hold as support. And then maybe we get that push back up later on. That could have been more insight for me if I had this chart planned and prepped up better. That's all. All right, really quick right now. Got a few of our members actually inside. Oh, Irving here. See Irving on YouTube right now. You could always join us inside our live trading room. It's the exact same webinar, webcam, everything that we always do. But otherwise, just for everyone else, just on YouTube, if you're interested in joining us inside our trading room, just scan that QR code on the top left of the stream right there to get you access right there with us. Continue the conversation all throughout the rest of this week and next. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Looks like the fun trade finally just took me out. Finally. It's unfortunate, but for as much as that was trying to build support right there, is looking like there was a chance. Higher low, didn't pop. So if it's not going to make that big move up, I'm not holding on much longer. So, I'll readjust on this trade if there's another buying opportunity, but clearly this is still trending down. What? Actually, let's see. Yeah, if it breaks below this line, this thing looks screwed to me, because my next support line that I have plotted, not up until like 1235-ish, 1238-ish. So, yeah, this thing would need to make a bounce pretty soon if you're looking for that chance. We're going to finish up this workshop in about 15, 20 minutes, folks, or about 10, 15 minutes for that part. So maybe I'll come back to this trade afterwards. I'm going to jump onto a few coaching calls with students in a bit. But hey, if there's any other trades that you'd want to go over, definitely let me know. There we go, Irving. Irving says he's traveling right now. So, hey, that's even as good of a reason as any to join us on YouTube. Hey, if you're not inside our trading room, then in that case, if you're on the road, that's as good of a shot as you have at joining us day to day, week to week there. Jeff says got CLSK short shares. He was able to get it. There you go, Jeff. Nice. And he was looking for support on that initially, and it had a good bounce, CLSK. That was when it was, trying to push up with Bitcoin right there. You could see 1645-ish, this VWAP area at the time. But if it's not going to continue, if it's going to break down, made the same move as Mara, there we go. Jeff was able to get those shares to short CLSK. It's honestly better bang for the buck. It's cheaper, but it's not just that it's cheaper. It's honestly just as volatile to me as Mara. So the fact that it is cheaper and just as volatile, that makes it honestly a better trade. And that's why I've been favoring CLSK a lot more recently, up and down. Wayne says here in the chat, stop limit orders are absolutely necessary for short selling. They are absolutely necessary. That's it. Especially the fact that, for anyone new, I'm not saying this to Wayne because Wayne killed it in pre-market. He did really good this morning. But for newer students of CTU, if you're not familiar with our risk management, not even just setting the stop, that's important to begin with. But simply put, just like we said here, if this isn't going to make a big move off this big level going upward, get get ready for a big move just the other way, right? So that's not for me to tell you to like flip your trade and go the other way instantly. No, that's like, kind of impulsiveness more often than not. But it's a matter of saying you better know when to get out of these trades. So setting the stop and learning how to set an automatic stop is one thing. But just in terms of mechanics and knowing what the stock is more likely to do than not, if it's not going to make that big push from that big level that you're looking at, you're like, all right, there's a 200,000 share iceberg there. It's been holding underneath that level for the last 2 to 3 days perfectly. That's a big level. So don't try and just hope, right? So that's where just across the board, it's necessary. Stop orders in general. And then, hey, once you're looking to learn how to trade pre-market, that's the first step. You got to learn to not use stop orders. You can't use stop orders in pre-market. For anyone that says they get stopped out, I assume that they're just like in their head they got stopped. Like they closed the position out, right? Because you can't. Your broker platform doesn't allow it. That's it. All right, let's go over maybe one or two more trades, then we'll pretty much wrap up from there. Again, hey, folks, if there's questions that you have for me that you'd want to go over, stocks or trades otherwise altogether, shoot me over a quick email. We do this week to week here in our live trading room, that being josh@ctutrading.com. And, of course, on simulcast as well. All of us there. Tony, not Irving. Irving's a student. He knows already at this point. But for all of us otherwise, just josh@ctutrading.com is my email address. Any questions that you got for me there, definitely send it on over. But, we go back to fun. We go back to CLSK. That's kind of what I'm buckled in on right now. I mean, this is breaking lower, so not as buckled in for an entry, really. Just got stopped out before. So I'm just kind of watching that more in the passenger seat there. The CLSK, we just said previously. The Mara chipping away at that 2290-ish. So really for Mara, if you're looking for this to make a better bounce, there's a lot of factors that play into it. Obviously, SPY breaking lower as we're talking, so that doesn't help the cause really. SPY also has its own doji candle. Look at that. And for a $500 ticker, whether it's the SPY or not, I would respect that quite a bit. So that was at 508 and a little bit above. If it's not going to hold that as support, you're going to get that lower low, and that's what happened seemingly just before. But if we get a blast back above that price this afternoon, then rising tide will lift most boats. That's where at least Mara could likely make that push. But more importantly for Mara, if you're looking for a bounce from that doji on Mara's daily chart, let's honestly just get some sort of support to kick in on the bid. Let's get some big fat iceberg to show up on the buy side. I mean, this is 32K right here at 2250. Let's get like 102,000 shares to pop up suddenly. Something so out there, so obnoxiously big that we absolutely should get that bounce. When you see something like that pop up, that's where you gain the most confidence with getting that reversal. All right, folks, but hey, I'll tell you what, we're going to finish up Traders Talk, I think, right now. If there's any other questions, definitely let me know right now before we finish. Otherwise, we are pretty much good to go, right? And like we'd said, it wasn't the easiest of mornings. Thankfully in the green now, but it wasn't so easy at first. So I'm going to be a lot more conservative at this point heading into my afternoon. Going to jump onto a couple coaching calls with students at least. If there is something that's like an A+ setup, of course, I'll be able to try and take it. But if it's not really something I'm drooling over, chomping at the bit to get into, we'll wait till 2:30. We'll wait till 3 o'clock, right? There's better times to be trading. There's better days of the week, seemingly. Probably tomorrow, Thursday, be better. But otherwise, folks, hey, we'll catch back with everyone at least this afternoon, right at 2:30 Eastern. That'll be simulcast as well on YouTube, Facebook Live, etc. I hope that you would enjoy us, at least on this workshop, just if you're on there. Robbie saying, I am new to this one. Can you please teach me? Hey, if you're interested in joining our trading room, Robbie, just for a week-long trial, for a small week test trial of our room, scan that QR code on the top left of the stream. Just if you're fancy with your camera, fancy with your phone, scan that QR code right there. It'll take you to a landing page. It's $9 for a week-long trial. I will be straightforward and tell you that week-long trial, it's not going to make you a master of day trading. It's going to take you like a couple months for you to really entrench yourself in our curriculum, our actual classes. This is more like a quick, speedy workshop. So after the week trial, we say, listen, if this is something you see yourself doing, then we have the time right there to teach you in our main curriculum. So the week-long trial is more of like a gauge, a test. Is this something that you see yourself doing long-term? We don't want any new member joining our room to just jump into trades to jump in, expecting, bing, everything right there. You're going to start making money. maybe you do it first, but you got to learn as to why you're making the money that you're making. And that takes just a little bit of time. So first comes the trial to our trading room. Then from there, if you're interested, then we talk to you about our classes. But hey, whether it's Ravi or Tony or Philip, any of us on YouTube right now, I appreciate your participation. I look forward to seeing you at least in our room coming up pretty soon. But again, for all of us there right now, Charlene, Chris, Bell, actually really quick, at the horn here from Charlene saying DTSS. Where did that come from? Probably just popped as I was talking. Simple as that. I wasn't really scanning, like actively scanning as I'm talking, right? I was answering questions and whatnot. So this obviously just had a big pop recently here, but looks like this had a big pop back in February on the 14th, and it utterly crashed. So I would probably assume for the same to happen here on this trade, this will be a complete pump and dump type of trade. So I would not look to trade this on large size whatsoever. Looks like it got halted. Got halted here, reopened up here, 1090. So speaking of that briefly, speaking about the halt print that came in at $10.90, it's possible that could be support. But if it slices right below there, then this thing is more likely than not toast. It's more likely than not done. All right. And then Kathleen lastly saying OCEA new high of the day. Wow. Yeah, it's a nice trade right there. I say now because honestly, this thing's rugged. This thing's choppy here. It's trending up off the lows nice, but for something that's like a $4 or $5 stock, you'd want something moving a little bit faster, like better pops for it to stick better off a breakout. So I like where it's at right now because it's breaking higher and it's at a resistance here at $6. So if it could truly break this resistance, then I'd love to see a sharper reaction, at least to see that get flipped into support. So great call from Kathleen there. And also great call from Charlene on the DTSS. Just this one's crazy one. This one, trade this on like no more than like 100 shares, really. You don't need more than 100 shares to make solid money on this trade. You do this on 50 shares and feel pretty gratified if it can move up $2, $3 for you, right? So that's where I teach students in class. Last thing that we want to have happen is for you to jump into a trade, kind of looking at the shiny object in the room without knowing like why it's doing what it's doing. And hey, not to go further into this or too deep, but for new students joining CTU, we don't want you to necessarily be mixing and matching all these different strategies you may have learned from other instructors here and there. It doesn't blend well with their strategies and then with us. You know, it's best to use a strategy that suits you, but not to overwhelm yourself with looking at all these different things out there. That's why indicators we basically just say do away with. But even aside from just that, hey, it's a matter of basic charting, support resistance, like trend, higher lows, higher highs, lower lows. And that's pretty much it. Right now, this thing's on such a horrible order book that I have no real interest in this now. But if it can make a move to one of my levels that I'm focused in on, then I could try and sink my teeth into it a little bit more. That's all. But hey, folks, we'll be back later on this afternoon, right at 2:30 Eastern, just for the afternoon meeting. I'll be on some coaching calls with students momentarily, so I'm going to send out the coaching link to you there via email. Look forward to it. And again, we'll catch back with everyone later on today. Take care.